You try not to be boring.
All right, man. I'm not being boring. Uh, Today's conversation: how to become bilingual. Brought to you by BlackPackas. Dun, 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 dun. Hell no. So today's topic, I feel like, is very timely and something that we should definitely have video and information in support of, which is becoming bilingual and um, kind of breaking a lot of norms that we have. Becoming, I feel like that's a key essential step to becoming more internationally minded and just living more of an international lifestyle. Javier, you got something to say?
Oh, hold on, man. What was the question?
It ain't even no question. But no, I feel like so just to get right into it, the reason, aside from just, living abroad, Javier lives abroad right now. I'm living in the States right now, but both having lived abroad for like years, you know what I mean? Um, we're both self-taught. My story is that, I'm straight African American from the United States. And I didn't grow up in a household that was bilingual. I didn't grow up in a household where even I just heard people around speaking Spanish outside of my home. As far as friends and things of that nature, and people I went to school with, and people who lived in my community, yeah, it was definitely there. Some of my closest friends were Hispanic and come from Hispanic countries. But I feel like I'm sharing my experiences because through living abroad and living in Guatemala and then living in Panama and traveling throughout Central America and Colombia, and the Caribbean as well, Spanish Caribbean as well. Uh, it's just been something that's helped me, and throughout the process of just becoming bilingual, you know what I mean? I feel like I've grown so much. I even understand English a lot better. So that's my personal, I feel like what gives me a little bit of validity as far as giving advice to someone else how to become bilingual. It's just my own process.
Just kind of piggybacking off of what Terry said. I'm also from Austin, Texas, and my background is slightly different. So I grew up with a Panamanian father and an African American mother. So my relationship with multiple languages has been a little bit different. I didn't grow up in a per se bilingual household where we use two languages at one time. That just wasn't the case in my house for many reasons that I understand now. But I've always had some limited knowledge of multiple language, of a foreign language or additional language than my native tongue, which is English. In this particular case, it's been Spanish. And to be where I'm at now, I definitely have to become self-taught through efforts and living abroad, and even living abroad in the Spanish-speaking countries, my Spanish has been strengthened. But it pre-moving here and traveling to other countries within Latin America or Spanish-speaking countries, it definitely has added so much to my experience and allowed me, like I always continue to say, to access different spaces, because being able to infiltrate a space and being able to understand it in its natural form, it allows one to experience something totally different than they would if they have to have it translated to them.
I can dig it. So, we just want to provide a couple key points and, address the topic of becoming bilingual and being bilingual from a couple different perspectives. So the first one we both kind of touched on a little bit, but we want to answer the question as to why is it important for a person to become bilingual, or why is it just important to even be mindful of being bilingual? So my points, for one, is brain exercise. Like our brain is a muscle in the same way our biceps and triceps are muscles. Whenever you do the same exercises over and over again, you don't really see the same type of growth, and you don't get the same type of results. So for people who are just trying to be progressive, if nothing else, it's good to keep your mind sharp. And also, like, we speak English, and English is more of a hybrid language, a mixture of other, it's Germanic and Latin. You know what I mean? That's the two mixtures. And I understand English and a lot of terms a lot more clearly from a root perspective of the word. In the fact that you might use a word in Spanish that's like a really old word in English. You wouldn't even say it that way in English, but it still carries the same meaning. So I feel like it's been very helpful that way. Also, as far as competition, so like in a current sense and in the current world that we live in, especially in the United States, you have migrations of people. People are migrating for different reasons. I look at what's going on in this country from perspective of a young African American person that's in the workforce, that's a young professional. I just every application that you do that entails, especially anything dealing with a governmental entity, you definitely have to come across the bilingual or not box. And whenever you check no, it just puts you at a natural disadvantage, because if I'm an employer of any sort and I know that I have a large percentage of my population that's Hispanic or Latino, and I don't want to miss out on that business, of course I'm going to hire a person who can cater to that customer base. So not to say that I'm just promoting us to go out and as African American people and seek the best jobs. I believe definitely that we need to become creators, but even in being an entrepreneur and just living in the world we're in now, it's like I'm from Texas, we're both from Texas or whatever, but in a lot of parts of the states, people I feel like are having a shock where, it's like, oh, well, what's happening to my country? It's changing. That's what's happening. It's changing. And I definitely think that to allow people to be totally divided and look at each other a certain type of way and treat each other a certain type of way based on language, especially a language that's coming from a colonial power, an imperial type of force is being forced on you from the perspective of a young African American person, it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any type of blood allegiance to English where I'm going to speak English and that's the only language I'm going to speak. I feel like that's very limiting. So I definitely see it as something that's empowering. And also, it just destroys a lot of ignorance. Like how you're saying, Javier, it allows you to infiltrate a space and it allows you to begin to not only understand, but also to begin to overstand, you know what I mean? Just to kind of to make sense of the things, that are around us, and also see the similarities and the contrast and just the uniqueness of another culture. You know what I mean? So that's my 2 cents on why to become bilingual.
Yeah, so again, just like a quick little anecdote, I really enjoy giving anecdotes. I work at an international school here in Panama, and we just got done with our 10th grade personal project. And I definitely remember walking down the lecture hall and seeing one project of a young lady who did a project about languages. And she had a quote written on her board, and I remember it said something like, "One language sets you in the corridor of life. 2 languages opens every door along the way." And I think that was so true in the importance of becoming multilingual and being able to manage and work in more than one language, because, it's amazing to have the language that you have and you're in that corridor, but just have to imagine all the different doors that will open up to a person who becomes multilingual, because you have access to different spaces to be able to understand and overstand different things and to be able to see things and understand things in different lights. It just adds so much to who you are as a person to be able to be multilingual. And I think, again, that one quote kind of sums it up the best way, about, being one language is going to put you, having one language with the proper access to these different, to life, if you will put it, will give you that access to a corridor. But to have more than one language, 2 or more languages will allow you, with that access to that corridor, allow you to open up every door along the way and go. So I think, that's going to be the important reason to become multilingual, is to be able to, take advantage of every opportunity may present itself to you, and travel related, be able to, again, access another space and understand it in its truest form, if that's the language that you are going for.
You heard me. Next question. So the topic: when should a person become bilingual? When is a good time to begin the process of of learning or adding another language, whether it be your second language or your third or fourth or however many it is? When is a good time to begin that? You want to answer that first?
Well, the best time to begin learning multiple languages for any person is always, like, if you're looking at what science says, is definitely the younger you are, the better. Just because the younger you are, if you're a child, and while children are able to acquire multiple language faster than adults, because the child's only job is to learn. I mean, that's a child's sole purpose, is to learn, and a child doesn't have to worry about life, doesn't have to worry about bills, doesn't have to worry about blah 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 next and the third. The idea is their function is to learn. So they acquire language a little bit better, and they're not afraid to make mistakes because they're still children. But I say all that to say that's just when they say, quote unquote, the best time to learn. But anybody can learn at any time, when they decide to acquire this additional language. I mean, for me, fully functioning to be able to capture Spanish and be fluent conversational and being able to work in it, it took me my 24th year of life to really sit down and try to become serious. And I don't think there's a specific time. I don't think there's a best time, an optimal time. Besides, when you're in your grammar school days and your only job is to be a student and learn. But life is, to be a student of life is something that never ends. So whenever you have the time to dedicate to learning something new, in this case a language, I think that's going to be the best optimal time for one person for a person to acquire a different language, is when you have the time and dedication in your personal schedule to sit down and take the necessary steps to do it.
Yep, that's favorite. I feel like to answer that question is kind of like people ask that question and they just want you to tell them what they want to hear, and what they already know, which is start now. You know what I mean? If you can, I would say move abroad, but that's definitely not realistic for a lot of people. It's just not realistic. So give Rosetta Stone. Give Rosetta Stone if it's you hear what I said?
It works. It worked for me.
No, yeah, it does. I ain't no great. But yeah, Rosetta Stone works. It can give you a foundation and a basis. Piggybacking off Javier's point about the younger the better. I taught preschool. I taught pre-K3 and pre-K4, and in that time, I came across children who already spoke 3 and 4 languages. So when I tell that to adults, sometimes they're like, "Oh my gosh, wow! How did they do it?" But it's just connectivity. We see things and we recognize it based on like a code word. So whenever you're tapping into another language, you're just learning the code words to identify and be able to recognize the things that you deal with in your everyday life. So I think that brings us to our third point, which is how. How does a person become bilingual? And I'll start this one off. So I say, actually, you know what? You start this one. Go ahead. You got it. How do you become bilingual? Let me look at all this stuff.
Well, I mean, again, always, piggybacking off of who I am as a person and what I kind of dedicate my life to. I work with youth in sport. So, and I think it always boils down to is you're able, and it's so cliche, but it's so true. You're able to do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it. So I think the step number one of learning, of becoming bilingual or multilingual, is to decide that I want to become bilingual or multilingual. And I'm going to put in the time and the effort to do it, because all the resources are there. All the resources one needs to become bilingual, whether it's Rosetta Stone, whether it's a grammar book that you get from Barnes & Nobles, whether you order the book from Amazon, whether you're watching YouTube videos, whether you're doing Google searches, whether you're doing a mix of everything in between, whether you're going to conversational classes that you find on Craigslist, or you're going to do different things. It all comes down to your overall desire as a person to want to do it and your dedication, because you're going to get what you put in at the end of the day. But if you're looking for like functionality, and steps. And, each person is different. What worked for me the best in my learning style, I actually bought a book called Practical Spanish Grammar for Beginners, and I was able to open the book on page 1 and finish the book at the end. All the answers were in the back of the book, and it was a workbook, so it gives you grammar, it talks about grammar, and I just went page by page. And, it's one of those things, when you're in school, you try so hard to cheat. Some people, cheat to get a grade, to do what you got to do. But, because you're being graded by the teacher and you trying to get the report card so you don't get in trouble. But at this point, as an adult who's trying to do something for themselves 100%, who you finna cheat? You feel me? Who I'm finna sit up here and cheat up with? At the end of the day, it all comes down to me. So that was the biggest motivation tool that I have for myself, not just cheating and looking at the answers in the back, was to do each exercise as it came. That worked best for my learner profile, and how I worked with grammar, how I worked with pronunciation and gaining accents. What worked the best for me was going to YouTube, listening to conversations in Spanish, different music and conversations from different countries, in particular Latin America, in particular Panama, because that was the accent that I kind of wanted to acquire. But actually, for me, the steps that worked best for me were the actual workbook. Again, Practical Spanish Grammar for Beginners. I did dibble and daddle with Rosetta Stone, was pretty good. And for pronunciation purposes and accents purposes, I use YouTube as a great resource because you have videos of people talking about whatever from different parts and different countries of the world. But there's many different methods, but that's one of the ones that work for me. And not to mention, if it's possible, the actual immersion process of being immersed in the language in the target language country. For me, in my case, was Spanish, and Panama was that place where I was able to immerse myself on a 100% basis.
Yeah, so I feel like as far as not, before we talk about actually living abroad and the immersion process and learning in that way, I say with me, like as far as a textbook, I wouldn't have gotten it that way, but I can definitely attribute me learning a lot of grammar aside from Rosetta Stone. Like, okay, before I moved abroad for the first time, actually moving abroad, not just visiting, but moving abroad, I knew I was going to Guatemala and, they speak Spanish. So I got Rosetta Stone and I studied for like 6 months. And, I felt like they gave me a footing. I felt like, I knew a little bit something compared to all my peers around me who didn't, they didn't speak Spanish at all. But whenever I got there, you realize, of course, you do all that work, and it definitely helped me because once I was in that environment, I was definitely able to grasp things and concepts and just manipulate the little bit that I did have to be able to express myself and kind of understand what people were saying to me and just around me in general. But one thing that I feel like really took me to the next level was actually reading. So I would get a book that was like more or less familiar or that I had already read in English before I would get it in Spanish. Nothing too daunting. You don't want to get a book that's gonna crush all your hopes and dreams of learning this language after you pick it up and it just totally defeats you. You don't want something that difficult. Like I said, you want something that's familiar, also something that's kind of manageable. I even to this day, I'm reading a book right now, and it's a higher level book. In that, over the past couple of years, I've already began this process, so I can kind of pick up different vocabulary, different phrases, more the writer's style, and just their way of expressing themselves, because it kind of brings you to a point where, even amongst, let's say, living in Panama, for example, I might have one friend or know somebody who speaks Panamanian Spanish, but their word choice is different, or the speed and the tempo that they speak at is different from somebody else. I might understand person B great, but person A, whenever I listen to them and we talk, we dialogue, I get the gist of what they're saying, but I don't understand it more as clearly as I do with another person. So it's kind of like that as well with writers. But the good thing about doing something or reading or ingesting a language via text, not just through your ear and through your eye, but actually, seeing it, actually seeing it on paper, is that it gives you the ability to go back and dissect something. Whereas if you're just having a conversation or it's not so much on paper, somebody runs something past you, you missed it, you can't go back and really figure out what that person was saying. And also it helped me clear up and with pronunciation as well, because whenever we think and whenever we read, for the most part, people read from their eye to their mouth to their brain. You know what I mean? And that's the circuit. Speed reading is just here to here. But most of us do this. And for somebody who's learning a language, that's very helpful, because even on a subconscious level, if you're not physically saying it out loud, your brain is still going through that pronunciation process as you go through each part of the word. So I just feel like that's something that's been extremely helpful to me, is actually picking up a book and reading. And the key thing I feel like fundamental is that in this process of learning a language, you cannot be afraid, or you cannot be paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, or paralyzed by the fear of looking dumb, or paralyzed by the fear of having to ask, what you say, can you explain? You know what I mean? Like, it's agonizing. At first, it might be a little bit difficult, but like anything that's worth having or knowing or whatever, you know, it takes work. It doesn't just come like that to everybody, to the vast majority of people. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's a very early fundamental step, is just getting over it. And as far as being in your native country or not being in that language, if you can find a connection to it where you are, like, definitely use it. You wanna affiliate and acquaint yourself as much with that language as possible, because even through a program like Rosetta Stone that's so helpful, you still miss out on the human aspect of it. You know, and I feel like this is another point. Speaking as BlackPackas, you know what I mean, we talk to the whole world, but specifically, you know what I mean? Like, the way that I speak Spanish, I don't speak Spanish in a way that's comfortable to me. So in the same way we speak English, yeah, we speak proper English, speak good English. I can speak even better English. I could use even nicer words. I could use a more extensive vocabulary. We can do that if we want to, if we choose to. But hold on. But my point is that whenever I speak Spanish, it comes more naturally when I speak in a more relaxed and natural way as how I do English. So you miss out on that. You miss out on your ability to also pick up on body language. You know, from culture to culture, language to language, people express something differently. We have more North American mannerisms, and whenever you go to another part of the world or you're dealing with another language, another culture, their mannerisms are different. So, you know, we just have to become aware of that. You become aware of it by connecting to it. So I think now, moving into that, you know, like taking actual steps and things that you can use and do while you're here, the next step would be actually in an immersion setting. So if you can move abroad, or if you can travel for a good amount of time in that country, or in that part of the world, language area, region, whatever you want to call it, what advice do you have for people in that setting, Javier, that are actually in it, that are immersed? Ways to learn.
I think. I hear echo. But if you're immersed in the setting, I think the best way to learn is to make those mistakes. And if I can recollect on Panama, I think the times that I learned.
Hold on, Javier. Hold on. I don't know what's going on. Let me let it clear up for a second.
Hold up.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
But it's all right. So yeah, so here in Panama is, you know, I would go and I would say something. And the wouldn't understand and would look at me like I had a problem. And, you know, or they would like rudely correct me. And I'm like, dang. I would always remember that situation about making that mistake in that certain situation and what was the correct thing to say. And in a moment, you're kind of upset. In the moment, you're kind of heated or whatever. But for me, that has been one of the best learning experiences that I could ever have, because those moments were the moments that allowed me to actually remember language and know what to use in certain situations. And also, I think it's important if you have the opportunity to be immersed in the situation. And I'm going to say this kind of with care too, because I live outside of the country where I was born and raised, even though I have cultural ties and parental and biological ties to Panama. I still, for the most part, if you will, have like an outsider perspective. And when I moved here, and I say again, I'm gonna say this with care, because many people say, if you go to another country, don't hang out only with Americans or hang out with people only from your country. Yes, I agree with that, but also I understand what that means when somebody says that, because you have to understand what community is, and you attracted to what you feel most comfortable with. And sometimes, what is what you're attracted to. So I'm definitely not negating that experience or ostracizing people who like to have their community that they're familiar with outside of their country of origin, because sometimes you need those experiences. You need those people to help you through that situation that are going through these same experiences abroad. But that shouldn't overtake your experience of being in another country, the opportunity to make other acquaintances, make other friends of the country or from other places in the world, and actually going out and conversating, if that's a word, and having conversations with people in Spanish, or in the language of the country you are, and getting out and talking to people, making mistakes, handling your business, your everyday activities. And continue studying it too, because I think once you're immersed in the host and the target language area, sometimes we plateau because we feel like we're getting pretty good, if you will. But I think you can encourage yourself to study just a little bit more, to continue excelling and continue growing where you are. But more importantly, if you have the opportunity to be immersed in the target language environment, the obvious answer is to use the target language as much as you can. Work through the frustration, because you will be frustrated. Work through the errors, because you will make mistakes and you'll see many errors. But know all the mistakes and errors that you make will be to your benefit. That's going to help you, be proficient and fluent in the language that you want to learn, and patience, because nothing happened overnight. And no, I'm not going to say that, but nothing happens overnight. So language can't be learned in 6 months. That's just the reality of the situation, but give it the time it needs to make as many mistakes as you need to. Keep your dedication, keep your determination, and use the language as much as possible. I mean, that's the idea. If you have the opportunity to be immersed outside the country, even in the United States, you might have spaces that you can access, especially in these larger urban areas that have different migrant populations, where you might have the opportunity to engage in that language, that target language that you want to, while in the United States, without having to leave. Use your resources. There's many things available.
Javier, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had to put my headphones in so it would stop echoing. But to go off that last point you just made. So before I talk about the international stuff, so before I talk about living abroad, one more thing, which is a good point about living here. So like being in Texas, I have so many opportunities to speak Spanish and to continually exercise and become better. You know what I'm saying? And to build on the foundation, that I already have from living abroad. But then also, see, like whenever I started Rosetta Stone, I was in Virginia. So Virginia doesn't have, in the part of Virginia I was in, doesn't have very many Hispanic people. So, I could just imagine if I was here, how much more that would have facilitated my learning experience. Another point that you made that was real good is talking about the plateau. And that's kind of necessary to talk about because it's a process. So you increase, you flatten out. You hit a wall, you keep making the same mistakes, you feel like you're not getting it, but you keep pushing, then you go up more. You know what I'm saying? It's just like it's a continual build. And like whenever you hit that plateau and you're like, it feels laborsome and it feels like, you should be at a better or higher level, continue, doing those things that you need to, to learn more and to deepen your knowledge, because you become comfortable once you master a certain realm or a certain type of vocabulary. Like even now, I'm functional, I'm proficient, I can speak, I can be understood, I can live, I can conduct business, I can do whatever I want to in Spanish. But if you put me in an environment where the vocabulary is more focused and it's more direct and it's more of a theme, and I'm not familiar with that, I don't know what y'all talking about. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know those verbs. I don't know those conjugations. I don't know that yet. But the more time you spend around it and the more you dig and put a little bit more effort into it, those things will start to become clear. And things that you might hear all the time or you might see all the time, and you're just trying to piece it together. And that's why one of the early points was like, this is mental exercise, of your brain forming those connections and building those bridges between a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of unknown, putting those two together, and then boom, now you're making sense of things. And then, so to go into the moving abroad stuff, so man, is I've met some people who lived abroad for a long time, and the amount of time they lived abroad doesn't match their proficiency in that language. You know what I mean? Sometimes people live abroad and they don't care to learn that the language of where they are, and that's fine. If that's not what you want to do, that's cool. But in speaking to people who do want to learn, that living abroad for a way too long to not know how to speak at a respectable level. I'm not gonna say respectable because it still is respectable. You know what I mean? But not speaking at a high level or even at a very proficient level. That is broken by having friends that don't speak your language. Like I'm pretty strong on that as far as like whenever you travel, like just don't do yourself a disservice by not putting yourself in situations that might be more uncomfortable. Not saying unsafe, but I'm saying uncomfortable in the sense of you hanging out with a group of friends. It's four of y'all. You the only one that's a native English speaker. Everybody else is a native Spanish speaker, but you got to keep up. You know what I mean? You don't want to just sit on the sidelines of every conversation. You don't just want to, see, every conversation away. You know what I'm saying? You want to be able to jump in. So those type of opportunities are afforded to you whenever you're putting yourself in those environments. I played a lot of basketball and sports abroad, you know what I mean? Whether it be with a soccer team. I never played soccer growing up, but, and living in certain countries, that's what they play. So my homies was like, yo, let's join this soccer little league or whatever. Okay, cool, I'm down. And you just pick up a lot of games, trash talk, same thing all over the world. You know what I mean? You learn other ways of communication. You learn more informal dialogue and everyday speech and slang and things that you hear, but because you never engaged with that realm of the vocabulary in like a personal way with somebody, you never had the opportunity to ask them, yo, what are you saying? What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Kind of touched on it again, but mimic locals. I'm living in Panama. I don't want to talk gringo Spanish. You know what I mean? I don't want to, of course people still know, okay, yeah, you're not from here, whatever, but I don't just want to sound like, no, you gotta acclimate your language learning to whatever environment you're more or less in. Make those exchanges more smooth and more natural and adjusted to where you are. And you'll find that that's an advantage, because even with Spanish, living in Guatemala, that's a different Spanish than what I had to speak in Mexico, or what I heard in Mexico, or that's different from what I heard in Puerto Rico, from DR, and from Colombia, from Panama, from all these other countries. So in dealing with situations and in people and just interactions in general with the same Spanish language in these different places, I feel like it's made me more of a well-rounded speaker, because I can pick up a little bit of slang that I got from this country, or maybe a more formalized word or term or just way of expressing something from another country, and I can put it together, and that kind of makes me more well-rounded, instead of just like I'm only learning, nothing basically. I don't even know what to tell you. Let me see. And use what you got, like back to the plateau in the process of learning a language. It's not, no, you just come here, you watch the video, and then you learn a million things. It's not really what it is. But I say use what you have. So if you got 5 words, finesse your 5 words until you get 10 words. And when you get 10 words, finesse those 10 until you get 20 and build yourself a vocabulary. Another key crucial point is probably my last thing, but let me rephrase my little, I can't rephrase this, too late. Don't necessarily learn words. You're not necessarily just trying to learn words. That's not the best way to begin acquiring and speaking. You want to learn phrases. Learn a phrase and then deconstruct it later. But learn the entire phrase. Learn an expression. Learn expressions and phrases. And then you'll actually find that as you take an expression and phrase and work backwards, your brain wires itself even tighter, because you're not just hearing a word and repeating or seeing something, a flashcard, and boom, this is what that is. You're taking the language as more of a whole, and then you're dissecting it piece by piece. So instead of just learning that word, now you're learning that word in context, conjugated, you know what I mean, with an actual tone and expression to it, instead of just like the word in the dictionary. You dig what I'm saying? And that's all I got, man. Oh, one more thing. I got one more thing. So as far as the benefits, it's probably my last benefit. Just growing up, Houston, very international city, one of the most international cities in the United States. I knew so many people and so many businesses owned by people who didn't speak quote unquote good English. To whoever's standard, they didn't speak good English, but that didn't stop them being successful. That didn't stop them building families in this country. That didn't stop them doing a whole lot of things. And I look at it, okay, from the African American perspective. Sure, I'm gonna learn Spanish, right? I'm continually learning. I don't speak perfect Spanish. I make a lot of mistakes. I don't understand some things that are said in certain circumstances, but I know enough to get started. I know enough now to where I could do business, to where I could work, to where I could live, to where I could, make friends, to where I could, it could be any type of situation. So don't let what you feel like, oh, I can never learn this, I don't know anything. Don't let that stop you from beginning to move forward. And as you're moving forward, it's not about being perfect. It's about being able to understand and be understood. And that's all I got.
That's about it for me too. I think we summed it all up. The benefits of being multilingual, again, taking it back to the young lady said, knowing one language is going to put you in the corridor in life. Knowing 2 languages or more is going to open up every door along the way. So, meditate on that and see how that functions in your life, being able to open up every door as you walk down the hallway. In the gift of language, the gift of communication, it allows us to open these doors and access these spaces. So it's so beneficial. My life has been opened up in many ways I can't even explain to you. In so many ways, being able to speak Spanish, being able to have these many different experiences in these Spanish speaking countries, seeing things, hearing things, feeling things, transformative things in my life. So wow. And that's only because of becoming bilingual. Not only because, but a strong point. And I'm gonna have to credit to being bilingual on this one. So stop talking about it, just do it, man.
You heard me? But yeah, man, that's it. Bless.